To anyone who's paying attention to US politics, it's clear that Biden isn't having a good time. Republicans are criticizing him for what they see as mishandling of the economy and inflation, while Democrats are frustrated about the lack of progress made so far on the progressive agenda. Today, Biden's approval ratings are lower than all post-war presidents at this point in their terms, and even lower than that of his immediate predecessor, Donald Trump. An astonishing 71% of Americans don't want Biden to run for a second term, including a massive 64% of Democratic voters and 94% of young Democrats. Wary of Kamala Harris's equally poor approval ratings, Democrats have started looking to alternatives, including California Governor Gavin Newsom. Newsom himself has started expanding his political footprint, recently appearing in a Florida ad attacking Ron DeSantis for his position on abortion, education, and voter access. The man could end up being his opposite number in 2024. So, in this video, we're going to take a look at three things. 1. Who is Gavin Newsom? 2. Why has he been floated as a 2024 contender? And 3. Can he really mount a significant challenge to President Biden? So, for the uninitiated, who is Gavin Newsom? Born in San Francisco in 1967, Newsom had a pretty cushy upbringing. His father, William Alfred Newsom III, worked as a legal advisor for oil conglomerate Getty Oil, before being promoted to the role of tax attorney to business namesake and billionaire John Paul Getty. Newsom Sr. even helped facilitate the ransom payments to get his grandson, John Paul Getty III, out of his famous 1973 kidnapping. Newsom apparently didn't perform brilliantly at school. He was an athletic kid and he ended up obtaining a partial baseball scholarship at Santa Clara University, where he majored in political science and graduated in 1989. After college, Newsom pursued a career in the winery sector, launching Plump Jack Winery with financial help from his connections at the Getty family. Plump Jack also expanded to cafes, and Newsom soon had a stake in a number of restaurants and wineries inside California. His first experience in political office was in 1997, when San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown appointed him to the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. He then ran to succeed Mayor Brown in 2003 and won, serving as mayor for 2 terms. He then ran for the lieutenant governorship of California after a failed attempt at governor in 2010. He won, served 2 terms, and then won the election for governor in 2018. And that's where he is today. So, on to the second part of the video. Why is he floated as a 2024 contender? Well, if we're being brutally honest, it's not because Newsom has been a standout governor, but mainly because the Democrats don't have many other great options, at least in terms of their electability. As a matter of fact, Newsom's tenure as governor has actually been pretty rocky. During his term, Newsom has been roundly criticised for failing to get to grips with California's spiralling cost of living, as well as the steady growth of its homeless population. This has caused many to leave the state, which is why California actually lost a congressional seat in the most recent census for the first time in history. Newsom also saw some pushback for his hardline COVID lockdown policies, which didn't go down well with some Californian businesses. Newsom even ended up facing down a recall election, brought on by both the unpopularity of his COVID rules and the fact that he'd violated his own rules by visiting a restaurant during lockdown. In the end, Newsom survived the recall by a healthy margin, with 62% of voters voting to keep him in place. But the fact that the recall got as far as it did suggests that a sizable minority of the Californian electorate really don't like him. That being said, Newsom has made some progress in endearing himself to California's more left-wing voters, such as raising the minimum wage, launching a student education aid program, and a recent pledge to lower insulin cost by making California produce its own supply. These concrete policy achievements contrast favourably against Biden's own legislative deadlock in Congress. All in all, Newsom's approval ratings have basically hovered at around 50% for most of his term, with a net approval of about plus 15. While that's not brilliant, and those numbers are probably slightly inflated by the fact that California leans more Democrat than the rest of the country, with nearly twice as many registered Democrats as Republicans, it's a lot better than either Biden or Harris, who are sitting at about -10 and -12 respectively. It's also worth mentioning that the results from the non-partisan gubernatorial primary, where Newsom won 61% of the vote, suggest that he's well on track to win a second term in November. Anyway, on to the third and final part of this video. Can Newsom actually beat Biden and become the candidate? Well, the odds aren't exactly in his favour. Every single time in American history when an incumbent president has run for his party's nomination for re-election, they've won. The closest race was the 1912 Republican National Convention, where incumbent William Howard Taft had very strong opposition from another former president in Theodore Roosevelt. But even here, Taft ultimately pulled it out with support from party bosses. This angered Roosevelt, causing him to run as a third-party candidate in the general election. The case most similar to Newsom is probably the 1980 Democrat race between incumbent Jimmy Carter and US Senator Ted Kennedy. Carter, like Biden, was an unpopular Democratic incumbent that had to contend with high inflation, rising gas prices, and a foreign crisis, and this sized him up for a challenge from the left flank of the party. Worryingly for the Democrats, Carter ended up defeating Kennedy, only to lose the presidential election to Republican candidate, former California Governor and actor Ronald Reagan, with 27% of Democrats backing Reagan. Newsom could end up doing the same thing to Biden, splitting the party and dooming the Democrats to a hefty defeat in 2024. On the other hand, current polling suggests that both Biden and Kamala are already on track to lose the next election. So, in some sense, the Democrats have got nothing to lose by letting Newsom take a shot at the candidacy. The point we're making is that in normal times, running against an incumbent president would be a bad idea. But, well, these aren't normal times. Ultimately, with Newsom on track to be governor of California until 2027, he's well placed for a presidential run, if not in 2024, then 2028, or even 2032, and definitely one to keep an eye on. If you do want daily updates on stories like this, then you should subscribe to the Daily Briefing. That's our daily show where we explain 5 news stories every single day. We pick the big stories, the ones you need to know, as well as some smaller ones you might otherwise miss. So if you want to be better informed about the world around you and news all around the world, you really ought to subscribe. And it's only a few minutes every day, so what do you have to lose? We post a video version every weekday over on the TLDR Daily channel, so subscribe there, or you can listen along to the podcast by searching for the TLDR Daily Briefing in your favourite podcast app. Thanks for all your support, and I hope you enjoy the new show.